College can be a very stressful period for most college students. In an attempt to gain control over the mess that's happening around us, apart from the midterms and snowstorms, we try to adapt new habits because we want to be better. We try to eat healthier, we try to exercise more, maybe even do our laundry. When you're a college student, your whole life is pretty much a new habit. Of course, it's an opportunity for a new start, for a new slate, adulting. Well, adulthood comes with a price. Due to the lack of consistency, due to the lack of the yet-to-develop routine, the balance, we feel stressed. In fact, 80% of college students frequently experience stress on a daily basis. 80%. So, what can we do with that? I mean, accumulating, the stress can lead to horrible things, starting from anxiety, depression, all the way to a month's worth of dirty laundry. In my case, it led to an eating disorder. The darkness of sophomore year was terrifying to me. All those rumors about freshman 15, sophomore 20, and so on made me overly conscious about my eating habits and exercise routine. Plus, as my fellow international students probably agree, all these stereotypes about American food don't really help this situation either, or not really stereotypes. So I decided to try and count calories, count macros, because that's what fitness models do. I would avoid pizza, I would exercise frequently, but somehow I ended up with an empty pint of Ben & Jerry's almost every night for over a year. Sometimes it could have been a box of Cheerios. The whole freaking box. How? I realized that the more restrictions I added to my diet, the more restriction I added to my life, the more stressed I was, the more I was falling into this vicious cycle of undereating and then overeating. I felt completely devastated. I felt so worn out from all these failed attempts to gain control over my life, to find balance. So, in order to counteract that, as my logic told me, I needed to start taking laxatives. I needed to make myself throw up in order to counteract the calories that I consumed. If that didn't work, I would go over exercise. I would do crunches in the middle of the night when my roommate was asleep. What? Obviously, none of these strategies worked. It actually got worse. I started avoiding my friends. I wouldn't even pick up the phone. I skipped classes. I hated myself. I was on a competitive dance team at the time, and while it was one of the most loving and friendliest families I've been on, I took every opportunity to avoid them. I didn't even take pictures. And so there are a lot of ways of breaking a bad habit. However, when you are experiencing an eating disorder, it might be hard to understand for someone who's never been through it. It's not something that you can just walk off. You can't just breathe it out. It's anchoring you to feeling calm. At the time, it's much easier for me to talk about it now since I'm recovered, but at the time I was too ashamed to talking about it. I was such a fitness advocate on the outside who would actually challenge boys on a pull-up bar. That actually happened. We can go out. That I just felt fake that I'm the one who has an eating disorder, the one who tells you how much grams of sugar you have in your drink. How could I have an eating disorder? As I said before, there are many ways of breaking a bad habit. One of them is changing the environment you're in, going to a new place. And so that would partially work for me. The only thing that helped me break this vicious cycle of my eating disorder were my trips back home. Well, you know what? Going back home doesn't quite qualify for a new place because I mean, I grew up there. I've lived there for 18 years. But for some reason, these trips to Russia were very helpful. I didn't just feel nice, I felt balance. And this feeling would start every morning at 6 a.m. Yes, the routine that my parents created around the morning hours, it was so natural for me to follow that whenever I would come back, I just felt into it. It was innate. And the ease of following this habit of the morning routine, it gave me the energy, it gave me the strength to power through the day, and I didn't have the need to binge. I didn't need to feel distressed. Do you want to know what the routine was? Do you want to know what helped me stay Ben & Jerry's free for the time I would go back home? It involved this. I'm glad you are interested. It was 3 little things. A cup of coffee, something sweet, and a book. Disappointing, right? I know you all have that in your life. But no matter how cheesy this sounds, this cup of coffee was something more to me. This combination of things was the habit that I was used to. It was the habit that I was familiar with. The fact that it was innate to me, I didn't have to challenge my brain to adapt a new morning routine. And that's what was giving me the energy. Researching later, I found out that there is actually a scientific background to that. Neuroscientists say that there are 2 different parts of the brain. Basal ganglia is the one responsible for our habit creating, while prefrontal cortex is the one that's making decisions. So when your activity becomes more of a routine, becomes more automatic, your prefrontal cortex, the one that's responsible for decision making, goes into a sleep mode. So you have all this mental activity that's unused, that you can devote to something else. So that's why people say that habits, that routine, that they can actually make your life easier. And this magic of the morning routine that I had back at home was very appealing to me. And I decided to bring it back to college and see if that's going to help me to recover from my eating disorder. Of course, I was doubting, but as weeks have passed and I was just looking at the way I was feeling, how I was feeling, I was so surprised that I didn't have the urge to binge. I felt calm. This routine gave me the comfort, the balance that I was looking for. I was very afraid to lose it, but as a month have passed, I started to feel more confident. I felt like I'm finally exiting this vicious cycle of overeating, undereating, feeling guilty. I finally felt like I found my balance. So the point of my talk, of course, is not to make you all drink coffee in the morning, but think back to your memories. Perhaps there were some habits that you used to do before college that gave you comfort, that made you feel balanced, that made you feel sane before you started this stressful college life. Maybe it was an afternoon tea, maybe it was an afternoon siesta, or a morning walk with your dog that you can't unfortunately have on campus anymore. Try bringing back the familiar to your not so familiar life. If you are finding yourself in a similar situation, if you think you might be a victim of an eating disorder, or you're just stressed over the internship search and you don't have an affectionate friend to hug you, try this. Perhaps it will work, because sometimes to have a brighter future, you do need to look back. So give old habits another try. Thank you.